All right, let's get right into it. You know, for any student of surgery, some topics are more than just facts. They're what we call rank deciders. And when it comes to biliary surgery, the Strasberg Classification of bile duct injuries is definitely one of them. Nailing this isn't just about passing a test. It's about really understanding a surgeon's roadmap for when things go seriously wrong.
So why? Why is this one classification system so incredibly important? What makes it separate the top students from everyone else? Well, it's because it's not just some academic exercise. It's a real-world framework for thinking through one of the most feared complications in a very, very common surgery.
And I'm talking about laparoscopic cholecystectomy, gallbladder removal. Millions of these are done every year. And while it's an incredibly safe procedure, there's still that small but very significant risk, almost up to 1%, of injuring the bile duct. This is where the textbook hits reality, and why having a super clear classification system is absolutely essential.
An injury to the bile duct, it really is often called a surgeon's worst nightmare. The Strasberg Classification was created specifically to bring some order to that chaos, especially for the kinds of injuries we see with modern laparoscopic tools. It gives surgeons a common language to describe what happened and, more importantly, to figure out how to fix it.
Okay, to really get this, we're going to use a powerful mental model. I want you to actually visualize the biliary system as a tree. The main thick trunk, that's your common bile duct. And sprouting from it are the major branches, the hepatic ducts coming down from the liver and the cystic duct coming off the gallbladder. Seriously, this simple image is the key to unlocking the whole thing.
So think of this diagram as our map. Now don't get bogged down by all the labels right now. Just focus on that central Y shape. That's our biliary tree. We've got the main trunk, we've got its key branches. Every single injury we're about to talk about happens somewhere on this landscape. Just keep that basic Y shape in your mind.
All right, let's start our journey through the classification. We're going to trace these injuries logically, starting from the smallest, most peripheral branches and working our way right down to the main trunk of our biliary tree. First up is type A, and the mnemonic here is perfect. Think A for accessory ducts. This is just a small leak, usually from the cystic duct stump after the gallbladder's out, or maybe a tiny duct in the liver bed called a duct of Luschka. The main tree is totally fine, it's intact, but there's this little persistent drip. And here's the key takeaway. This is, by far, the most common type of bile duct injury. Okay, now let's move a little bit up the tree. We're going to shift our focus to a very specific set of branches, these little accessory ducts that can sometimes come off the right hepatic duct. This is where we'll find types B and C. Now pay close attention here. Type B is for blocked. A surgeon accidentally puts a clip on one of these small accessory ducts and ties it off. So that little branch of the tree is now dammed up. But, and this is crucial, there's no leak. Now compare that to type C, which is for cut. In this case, the same duct gets cut, but it isn't tied off. Now you've got an active bile leak going into the abdomen. You can see how the difference between a block and a leak is, well, it's everything.
And this slide just makes that difference so obvious. On the left, type B, you see the clip, you see the blockage. But look over on the right. For type C, you see that open, leaking duct. It's the same spot, but it's a completely different problem, and often a much more urgent one. So we've moved from the branches, and now we're at the trunk itself. This is Strasberg D. Just think D for damage to the main duct wall.
This is a whole different animal. This isn't a cut branch. We're talking about a lateral injury. Imagine the main trunk is a major pipe. A surgical tool has just grazed it, causing a puncture or a tear in the side. The pipe is still connected, right? It's still whole, but it's got a hole leaking out the side. So, just to recap, we've covered leaks from small ducts, blocked off branches, and tears in the main trunk. Okay, now we're going to get into the most severe category of injuries.
And that brings us to type E. Think E for extensive or even everything else. This is the catastrophic one. This is where the main trunk of our biliary tree has been completely cut all the way across, a total transection. This is the classic, most feared complication of this surgery.
And here is a critical connection you have to understand. Strasberg A through D were the new additions, designed specifically for these laparoscopic-era injuries. But type E isn't new at all. It's basically just the original bismuth classification, which surgeons used for decades to grade these major injuries. So for all practical purposes, when you hear Strasberg E, you should think bismuth classification.
So how do we grade this disaster? It's all about the location of the cut. Think of it like climbing higher and higher up the tree trunk towards the liver. E1 is a cut way down low, leaving more than 2 centimeters of healthy duct for the surgeon to repair. E2 is a cut higher up, leaving less than 2 centimeters. E3 means the injury is right at the junction where the main branches meet. E4 is even worse, that whole junction is destroyed. And then E5 is a special case, a major injury to the trunk that also involves one of those little accessory branches.
Whew. Okay, let's pull all of this together. We've walked the entire biliary tree from the smallest leaks to a complete transection. So now let's boil this down into the high-yield summary that you absolutely need for your exams.
This slide right here, this is your key to victory. It is the entire classification in one single memorable mnemonic. A for accessory leak, B for a blocked branch, C for a cut branch, D for a defect in the side, and E for everything else, which means the major bismuth-level transections. If you can remember this table, you can answer pretty much any question they can throw at you.
But hold on, there is one more distinction you absolutely have to know. Exam questions love to try and trick people by confusing two different concepts: the most common injury versus the classical error. So let's be crystal clear on this. What's the single most common bile duct injury? It's Strasberg A, that small, annoying leak from the cystic duct stump. But what happens in the classical error, where a surgeon mistakes the main bile duct for the cystic duct? That tragic error leads to a Strasberg E, a complete transection. Knowing the difference between most common and classical error is an absolute game changer.
See, by understanding the anatomy as a tree and just following that logic from A to E, you've built a really solid mental framework. You're not just memorizing a list of facts, you're actually understanding the patterns of injury. And that really is the ultimate takeaway. Don't just learn the letters, visualize the biliary tree. See the branches, see the trunk, and map these injuries onto that structure in your mind. If you can do that, you'll be able to think through any scenario. Just focus on the tree, and you will never miss a Strasberg question again.